We're on. We're live.
It's good to be back. We've waited way too long, truthfully, to jump back on and shoot this, but the time feels right to have these conversations and get back into our podcast. I've been missing it and definitely feeling aligned about the direction we're going to take this. And so, yeah, excited to get started.
Yeah, me too. I don't know specifically how long it's been since Steve and I have recorded an episode of Creating Space, but it has been calling us back in for a while, slowly pulling us back to the podcasting room, and we are super pumped to be back.
Yeah, and it's an exciting time. Would be remiss not to give a shout out to our team who's been pushing us for a while, but I think many businesses would relate to this, and it's something that I often have sold to other businesses, is that your own marketing often gets pushed to the side, and us being a marketing agency, we're no different. And so appreciative to the team for all the work they've done recently in auditing our own brand, our marketing, coming up with a plan. And so that helped get us back on the horse here to start shooting episodes again. And really, like I said, super excited to be doing it. So yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, so let's get into it. I want to know, Steve, what's something that you have learned lately, or what's something you've been kind of digging into these days?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot, especially new energy coming into the new year, and full transparency with our business too. I often find in business marketing specifically, Q4 can be an interesting time. Businesses are looking at their budgets, at everything that's been working, not working. Marketing is often in those conversations. And again, we're really no different. So coming out of Q4 and our in-person meeting, spent a lot of the time over the break really thinking about what we could do differently, where we could optimize, where we could improve. And so I wouldn't say it's been something I've been learning this week. I'd say the last 3 weeks coming out of our break, it's been a real high intention and focus around evolving our processes, working with Mike, our head integrator, head of organization design, and trying to be a little bit messy, but work quickly here to optimize things. And so what I would say the core learning has been for us is the importance of working in what I would call sprints.
Yeah.
So we've often sold our work in hours in the past. It's been an effective way. I shouldn't say often. It's how we've sold our work is in marketing retainers. And Mike had shared a podcast with me over the break. It is one of the things that started having me think about this, where an agency not too different from ourselves was working in these focused sprints. And the trigger for me was when the owner was talking about the fact that when you don't work in a focused container like that, it's very easy for the opposite to happen, which is to become unfocused. And
Right.
that sunk in big time with me, my own personal experience of working, trying to stay on task, but also something that truthfully I felt we had struggled with, which was sometimes doing the proactive work in a focused way rather than being a little bit more reactive in our marketing work. And often what I'd end up calling order taking with our team, which was not what we were selling to clients. So it's been a whole new reinvention of how we go through our weekly meetings, the meeting structure, the accountability to the tasks, and the way that we formulate those around these focused sprints. And it's been very impactful. I would say short results over the last 3 weeks, although it has been messy, like I mentioned, it has been very, very positive, and very appreciative of the team too, because the culture and what we've built at Space Creators around it being remote, a lot of freedom in your work, as long as you're getting your work done and done to standard. Some of these processes around, an extra meeting on Monday, very client focused, and establishing those sprint goals is an extra meeting. And then having these accountability meetings every day for 15 minutes, what we're calling a stand-up. Again, that could feel very counter to what we had built in the past, but it's created that space and opened up, I think, a lot more freedom on the back end, because everyone feels good knowing that we have that focus and that quality work is getting pushed out the door.
Yeah, I totally agree. So can you just walk really quickly, walk us through what is a sprint? So we're saying we're working in focused sprints. What does that mean?
Yeah. For us, specifically in the work we do, as I had mentioned, we were selling our fractional marketing team service or our retained service in hours before. And the spirit of it is great. The idea is we're going to spend the right amount of effort on the different marketing practices within those hours to deliver the best results. I think it sounds great. The idea of it is great. But for us, it would become a little bit difficult to stay super focused week to week and not kind of transition into more of that order taking spirit with our clients that I had mentioned earlier. So for us now, it's a little bit more getting to a deliverable based approach. So it is us really wanting to commit to so many actions a month, then breaking those actions down into weekly sprint goals. Right. So it's much more defined that this week we need to work on X amount of this to get it out the door. And then now all these great processes that Mike had built are actually starting to work a lot better because it is this more focused approach. So it is determining that broader goal for the week for the client and the deliverables that need to be done, then having accountability to each of those tasks amongst our team, and then those 15-minute stand-ups daily to help make sure that we're on task, have accountability, that we worked on what we said we were going to work on, what we're going to work on today, and also unblock anything quickly in that 15 minutes that we can as a team. And yeah, it's been great. And again, I think our businesses are often a reflection of ourselves as leaders. And so I know for my brain, any kind of container or process that can help keep me on task is very, very, it can be a little bit of friction at the beginning to lean into it and accept it. But then once you do it, you start to see the light that, hey, this is opening up a lot more freedom to get the quality work done.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. How have you felt about it so far? I mean, I think you've been right in it with us and going through all these new processes.
Yeah, I think it's been really good. And I agree, like just the idea of focus, right? Of knowing collectively as a team what everyone is working towards, I think is really helpful. And it's creating a lot of clarity for everyone across the board of like, everyone knows what is happening every day in the business. Like there's no questions of who's working on what, who's on what projects, who's on what clients, who's account managing this. Like it's so clear because we're talking about it every day, right? And we do have a bigger team now. And so I feel like this level of communication and collaboration is necessary for us to be successful. So I've been a big fan of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think what you make me think of too, just as our team has grown, it can be harder when you have a remote team specifically to sometimes have that sense of connection that is missed when you're not in an office. Back when I worked in an office, there were a lot of things that I did not like about it. I did love the sense of community and connection and friendships I made. And I look forward to going in and having that camaraderie with my coworkers. We have that as a remote team. And that's been an interesting effect too of us having these daily stand-ups, whether they're just 15 minutes or not. It still creates a little more cohesion, a little more connection when you work from home and you don't have that naturally in the office. And I think the team has enjoyed that and responded well to having that little bit of extra connection. So yeah, like I said, it's been more of a 3-week learning and pretty intense in many ways of focused work on the business and processes, but it's been cool to see how quickly it's formed and made a big difference in the new year. So it's been really fun. How about you? What have you been learning here? What have you been focused on?
Well, I have been going really deep on this concept and idea. It's not new, but not new to me or new to anyone, but like just going deep on the learning of building a brand world. And so I have been completely obsessed with this over the last few weeks as well, really starting to learn as much as possible about brand world building. I learned about it in depth. I listened to this marketing podcast called Sweat Equity by Marketing Examined, which is a great listen. And if you're interested in learning more nuances about marketing, it's a really good one. And they always talk about brand world building and the importance of it. And so since starting to go really, really deep on it, I've started to really share this a lot with our team, teaching everyone on the team about brand world building, how to do it, and implementing it for some of our clients, which has honestly been super, super fun. So the whole idea of it is really thinking about your brand in really nuanced terms. So it's like, we're going way beyond what does this look like? We're going way beyond what's the brand voice? What's the logo, fonts, colors? This is like the full ecosystem of a brand, right? And it's like, the most important word, I think, in brand world building is consistency. It's about being consistent and having a consistent narrative across every single touch point that a person could ever make with your brand. And I think it's something people really underestimate. And they think, if I'm using my same brand colors every single time, that's consistent, right? But it's not.
I think, can you dive in a little deeper? Because when you first showed it to me, I was like, and again, full transparency, we've been in marketing and running this business for quite a while. We've done so many branding projects. I'd never heard of a brand world in this context when you first showed it to me, but I was blown away as you were showing me some of the work you had done for our clients. And again, I think it would be worth for our listeners for you to dive just a little deeper in like, what is the actual detailed difference between a brand world, the creation of a brand world, versus like brand guidelines or visual identity of the logo and typography? Because it was so much deeper, and we can dig into more how I've even practically seen it be very useful for some of our clients in our work.
It's an incredible decision-making tool when it comes to business, right? And having a brand. So the ways that it's different is it's starting to think about when someone interacts with my brand, like, how am I actually making them step into this world and become part of it? And we do that in so many ways beyond just the logo, the fonts, like I was saying, like that is very necessary as well. But like, this is thinking about your brand in the context of, what does it smell like? What does it sound like? If your brand was a time of day, what time of day would it be? What kind of car is it? What restaurant is it? What movie or TV show? What song? And when you start to answer those questions, there needs to be consistency in those answers. So if it's like asking what kind of drink it is and you say it's Red Bull, but then you say, what song is it? And it's like some soft, sweet love song.
Right.
There's a disconnect.
Those don't necessarily align.
They don't really align. And so we are stepping away from cohesion and consistency when we start to have all these different sort of things that actually don't really fit together in the brand world, right? So if you think about, a good example is Disney, right? So every single interaction that a person has with Disney, no matter where you are in the physical world, it's the same. It looks the same. It sounds the same. It smells the same. It's all the same. It's set, like the music is the same, right? And so it's so seamless that every interaction with them, you are in that world.
Would you say it's fair to say, because I remember learning this a long time ago in marketing fundamentals, but I think it can be mistaken, is that, again, like the visual identity, the logos, these things are more how it is perceived by the audience in terms of look, but this brand world and brand is diving deeper into how your business, your brand feels to the audience.
Yeah, which I think you would hear a lot of people talk about, right? Like that's the kind of more important aspect of having a brand, is like, how does it feel, or how does it make someone feel? I definitely think that leans more into this idea of having a brand world. The whole thing is like, when you can go into this level of detail, what I had just mentioned is it makes decision making easier. So when you start to think about your content, your email marketing, your merchandise, like you can start to ask yourself, based on having this incredibly deep understanding of the brand, does this belong in my brand world?
Yeah. Well, and I know you created it for one of our clients, and it was really interesting. On our very next meeting with them, it came up that, hey, from the client's perspective, it was a competitive advantage that they could do all different types of posts on their social media any kind of post, speak in all these different ways, and
Yeah.
all these different visual identities could show up. And the social does great. Truth be told, like it's very engaged in terms of vanity metrics,
Right.
Like it does very well. The audience is growing. It gets pretty good engagement. But as I was kind of reminded of some of these things as we were going through the brand world, it really highlighted for me, just because you can do all those things, from a deep brand perspective, it doesn't mean you should. And having those kind of guardrails to come back and take the ideas around, but then bounce them back off against the brand world and make sure like this actually aligned with the deeper brand work. And it doesn't mean the ideas were bad.
Nope.
They might just not be reflecting what your brand is. This particular client is like top of the market, high-end product. So maybe some of the stuff that was working but was shot a little bit grainier and some grungier backgrounds that could work for engagement wasn't necessarily aligned with that deeper brand world. And so being able to rely on it's been invaluable.
Totally. We used it to make decisions about recording this podcast episode.
Yeah.
Right? Of like, okay, does this thing that I want to talk about belong on this podcast? And it becomes very easy to say yes or no when we're thinking about the whole idea of, does this belong in the brand?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's really, really helpful, because the whole thing is, if ultimately your goal of all of the efforts that you have in relation to having a brand is to probably turn someone into a paying customer of yours, then it isn't enough for you to just put stuff out there and hope that someone buys from you. You want to create a brand world where they're not just buying from you, they live in your world. And then that means that they're buying from you, they're telling everyone about you, they're showing you off to other people, they're constantly talking about you because they live in your world.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think, just like you met, the Disney example is so strong. And I think you could think of any big brand has this on some level, and they are paying so much money to their marketing, to their branding department.
Like a Nike, like they have created such a seamless brand world. There is not one piece of their marketing that you could ever mistake for not being there.
No, the only times they would get messed up is when they give up the control to a retailer in store, and even then they have such strict rules about how to use that. That shouldn't happen.
It wouldn't,
because they know the value of it. So I think for our audience, again, it's never too early to start thinking deeper about your brand and trying to develop those types of elements. You've made me think it would be worth it. Maybe we can share on our socials just a couple of examples of brand worlds, so that if you want to come and actually see it, see what those look like, see what's included, we'll try to share that with our email list. I think would make sense, and put some example posts online so you can tangibly see what's involved and maybe create one for yourself.
Another small hack that I really like to do is, like, once you know what song your brand would be, or maybe what album, or like what kind of music, I like to listen to that music when I'm working on that specific client. And it really helps to have creativity that actually directly applies to that account.
I mean, such a good tidbit for you to share, because you're such a true creative. I've seen you now doing that, and it's a vibe to be like, hey, you're working on this brand work with their music kind of playing and creating that environment.
And the outputs become very different. I did 2 different ones last week. One, I was listening to Fleetwood Mac Rumors album, and that's one vibe. And then for another client, I'm listening to Kanye. And so you can imagine like the creative outputs that come out of those 2 different sounds. It's really cool.
I love that. And even furthermore, you were explaining this to me too. You just reminded me. Then it's like, hey, how important is the music in social content, right? And that it hits and you edit it to the music, but also the song choices. And everyone knows you can go with trending audios, and there is value in that. But you were telling me, and I agree, I think it's more important that the audio is good and it's on brand. And right?
I've started suggesting that, and we've done that for some clients now too, where instead of using trending audios, we've actually used the audios that we think belong in the brand world, and the posts have actually performed better.
Yeah, this one was really good. Like I said, we'll make sure that we share in the next week here some examples,
Yeah.
because I'm guessing it would be useful for you as the listener to be able to go on and actually see it. And
We could even do another episode where we actually do like a case study around
that'd be
the
fun.
brand world.
Yeah. Let us know online here if that's something you'd be interested in, and we'd be happy to put that episode together.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we move on to the next segment? Obviously, we're excited about brand worlds. That was great.
I know, because they're so cool. I
Yeah.
can't get enough of them. This is why I said I'm obsessed. I can't get enough. Next segment for the show that we want to get into is the marketing breakdown. And also, just to note, like, we have loosely named these segments, and they could change over time. And particularly if you have an idea for us of something that you would like the segments to be called, or that kind of speaks to you, we definitely want to hear about that from you. But right now, we're calling this one the marketing breakdown.
Yeah, we feel like you could do better. So give us your thoughts. We'd love to have your input, and winner will get the title of these segments.
Yeah. So really, the whole idea about this segment is like, what do you want to talk about today in the world of marketing?
Yeah. So this one, I know I can relate to, so I imagine that our listeners would as well, which is this idea of the fear of missing out, or FOMO in marketing. I feel in today's world more than ever, with social media and and now AI is even pushing things out faster than ever. There's such an easy environment to feel like you're not doing enough, or that you're missing out on opportunities if you're not the first one on these trends or best practices, that you're going to miss out on them and not get any of the value and be left behind. So yeah, I'd love to dig into that as a concept today on the episode, and get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, and this is a key thing that, especially we're very upfront with people in our discovery calls about how people are obsessed with like trying to make things happen really fast. And this could also be a byproduct of like the speed at which things are growing and changing, like you mentioned. But people want quick wins. They want things to happen really, really fast. And it might be a reflection of they feel like they're in a race, right? Like every business feels like it's racing against another one to try to like be the first, be the best, get the most. But when it comes to marketing, we really need to work on that mindset of thinking about it as more of a marathon, right? Like the marketing is a long game, no matter what. And building your brand world is a long game. All of this stuff that plays in together. You're right that this idea of like the always new trends, new things happening. Now you need to add this to your marketing mix or this. And it makes people feel like they're falling behind if they're not doing everything. And then they get FOMO.
Yeah. I think what's interesting that just dawned on me of how this episode is going is that our first segment and both of the things we spoke about, I believe, segue really well into this topic, which is just like you said, development of that brand world gives you this kind of consistent focus for your brand and how it should show up. And doing that work is incredibly important if you can make space for it. Also, what I was talking about in my learnings around the sprints, it makes me think about, for the fear of missing out on marketing and what you could be doing, I love this one analogy I saw where it's like, hey, in terms of intention and focus, you're much better to try to put it all into filling up one cup, working really hard on filling up that cup. And then from that cup, once it's built and full and overflowing, it's a lot easier to pour into the other areas and distribute more, as an example of your marketing, or try other things. I know for me, this topic, it hits hard because just yesterday I'm on Instagram and this clip comes across where it's this guy and he's sleeping on the couch and he's like, here's how I make, thousands of dollars every post. I go onto this AI, write a horror story. I clip it with these screenshots of Minecraft, and then I put it all together. I put it out. I make $7,000 a post.
Right.
And of course, in my mind, I'm like, oh my goodness, I
need to make a horror story.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, scrap the agency. We're just going to start clipping.
That happens to me too. Every single time I see one of those clips and it's like, oh yeah, I need to just give away everything I'm doing right now and go all in on this other thing.
Yeah. And then I go in the comments and talk about fear of missing out. It's like, oh, this opportunity's passed. You're too late. No wasted. It's like, okay, I'm glad I saw those because I don't know if the best decision would have been to stop doing a marketing agency and become a social media clipper, I now know is what it's called. But yeah, that's life. Yeah. And today you're always going to be hit with things where it's definitely going to be presented and marketed as probably a bigger, quicker, make money rich type of scheme than even what is actually feasible with it. So I think it just comes back to having a deeper belief in that you have an idea that you want to pouring into it, being focused, trying to do the best you can with that, put in the reps and get as good as you can at that. And then it will be so much easier to start to try and experiment with other things, have the space for when an opportunity that does resonate comes up to actually explore that. It's going to take that first amount of focus, work, and building to allow you to have that type of freedom and flexibility to try those new things.
So true, because I'm also a huge fan of experimentation in marketing, but it doesn't necessarily mean like experiment on everything all at once or try everything all the time, right? Like you can't actually make big impact by trying to try a little bit of everything all over the place. And that's why I think it's really important to have some questions that you can kind of lean on. Again, same idea with the brand world, having the guardrails. It's like some stuff that you can ask yourself. So when there's like a new trend or there's the next thing, the next AI, the next type of marketing that you are being told that you have to do and you have to try, that you can kind of ask yourself some things to check yourself, have a little gut check, like, does this actually align with my business goals?
Yeah.
Right?
I was just at this event at Acadia where we were presenting, and I mentioned the gentleman who came in and started talking about cryptocurrency to all the kids.
Yeah.
And in that was like, oh, and I made my fortune and it's too late for that. There's just a million examples of things that are going to try to tempt you. So
that's the nature of how things are. And it's a big way how other people make their money, and what they're doing is just another form of marketing, right? Yeah. But what's funny is they're probably going all in on that one type of marketing.
Absolutely.
Right? No, so they're not really like experiencing the FOMO. They're just pushing this really hard in this one area. So again, having some of that stuff to ask yourself, does this align with my goals? Like, is this actually going to help me reach my audience, or am I just creating more noise on the internet, right? Like, I find that a lot as I've kind of over time worked on my own content strategy. Be like, I've tried so many things and there's so many times where I'm just creating noise. I'm not actually saying something of value, substance, something that means something to me or says anything to my ideal audience. Right. I'm just jumping on a trend, thinking that it's cool or funny and that it's going to get me in front of a lot of the same people or like new people, and it does nothing for me.
Yeah, I think that it comes right back to what you were talking about with the brand world, where it can be very useful to make sure you have these foundational pieces to bounce back against and stay focused with what you're doing and learn. I still believe in failing fast and trying and experimenting, just like you said, but in a focused way.
Yeah. I also believe in smart decision making, right? And like one of those things is if you're going to want to try a whole bunch of things, you also need to have the resources to support.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of business owners fall into this trap where they overinvest or they invest in the wrong things because they think that they have to, or because they have this FOMO. And it's like, you need to ask yourself, like, before I go all in on this next thing, do I even have the resources? And that can be time, money, energy, people to actually commit to doing it fully.
Such a good point. And even some of these other creators I see that would bring up FOMO for myself, I have to remind myself, and you can go back in their feeds and see that they had a focused, pragmatic approach that scaffolded. And then as they grew and had more of this equity, in different ways, they're able to invest. We don't realize that some of these big influencers that are scaling content, they have big teams and resources behind them that are helping them in pumping out this content. And I would just kind of end this on that. I think having FOMO and experiencing that is a human response. So as long as we can kind of acknowledge as it comes up that it's normal, and it doesn't mean necessarily we need to do anything more with it than acknowledge it and try to then really apply, is it something I really should try, or is this a distraction, and filter it through that type of lens, and then just continue to work forward with the best belief we can, and what we're trying to focus on is the best approach.
Yeah, I think that's been kind of the golden thread of this episode, without actually intending for it to be, is just the idea of focus, and having a focus, and on how powerful that can actually be. Like everything from the sprints to the brand world to talking about FOMO, it's like actually about building your focus.
Agreed. So important. Still working on it myself.
Amazing. Well, last thing we want to do on the show is just really dive into the whole ethos of, what this show is about, what our business is about, and that's all about creating space. And so I really want to know what you are creating space for this week.
Yeah, you know this well. Coming into the end of the year, there are just some big health decisions that I really needed to make, some bad old habits. I'll share with the audience. I've been a user of cannabis for most of my adult life.
It just sounds so funny to hear you be like, I've been a user.
Yeah, it sounds very professional. I smoked tons of weed for many years, and I've considered myself a functioning user of such. And I just had come to the point where I realized it wasn't serving me. We had many conversations and with where we're trying to go. And so that, I'd say, was one of the biggest things that I had stopped. Cold turkey stopped it. And so going through all the things of, I think when you have an addiction and you quit it, and just, generally all positive. But as I mentioned with you, also, there's things when you have such a big vice that you relied on for, again, your entire adult life, things can start showing up in interesting ways. And even like, as I was sharing, I was feeling more anxiety around work and things that normally I'd be able to shrug off a bit easier. And then it dawned on me, hey, I don't have this vice or this way to just distract myself and change my energy around it. And so being able to sit with that. So long-winded way of saying that I've been trying to make these much bigger, healthier decisions for myself. It's helped me in playing sports and getting back into some of those physical activities, a much healthier release for me in terms of dealing with stress and anxiety is exercise. And I particularly love doing it in sports, and it kind of brings me back to my childhood self. And in that, my body is not as flexible as it was when I was a child. So again, long way to get to the fact that I'm really trying to do more stretching this week and make space for that stretching. And it sounds like it should be easy, but when you're busy, when you're sore, when you don't quite have the flexibility you did when you were younger, I have found it to be a challenge to get myself down on the floor and go through a stretching routine. So just really trying to keep focused around my goals of why I'm trying to do it, remind myself how good it feels after you get through that initial pain, and make sure that I do it every single day so that my body can hold up as I'm getting older to wanting to play hockey many times a week and exercise more.
You know what you remind me of? I saw this post this week that was all about the short story long.
That could be,
but it was a positive thing, and it was like framing it as like how great it is to have a connection with someone where you want their short story long. And I like listening to your short story long.
Well, that's good because there's a lot of them.
And now all of you can listen to them too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do find it's interesting when you start thinking through why you're doing something, though. I do think it can be important to really try to attach it to the longer story. There normally is one attached to it. And so for me, stretching in a vacuum can seem like a very mundane task to be focused on. Again, I need to kind of, for myself, think about the bigger reason why I'm doing it and why I'm committing to it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
How about you? What's your, I'm sure will be an actual shorter story than mine, but I can't wait to hear it.
What I'm creating space for this week, it's always my number one priority is creating time and connection with my son, with our son. That's my favorite thing to do. I was just away for a week last week, and it's always really hard to be apart. And I think that him and I are both craving that time and space together. School drop off was tough this morning. He didn't want to go, and he let me know it's because he really missed me when I was gone, and now he wants to have more time together, and it makes perfect sense, right? So I'm really looking forward to picking him up from school today, getting some really good time together, and actually taking that over the week.
Yeah, beautiful to have that clarity and ability and even relationship with him. It was very clear as he's 6 now how much, you being gone this time, he was missing you, and how that was showing up in different ways in his activities. And so we're obviously very happy to have you home, and it's already been great just the last few days having some of our family time at night and playing games together. And so yeah, I know he's happy you're back, and I am also happy you're back.
Me too. I'm happy to be back too. So listen, next time, one thing that we'd really like to do on the show is take Q&A from our listeners. And since we've been gone for a while, we know you're going to have a lot of questions for us. So we're going to add a final segment to the next show and moving forward where we're going to take questions from the mailbag. And so we would love for you to send us a DM, send us an email, get in touch with us, whatever way you want to, and let us know what questions you want us to answer for you on the show. They can honestly be anything. You're more than welcome to ask us marketing questions as well as business growth questions, personal growth questions. I would say anything is on the table.
Building a business with your partner, remote work. I mean, really anything that you think we might have experience with and would provide value to you. We really do want to make sure that the content we develop is for you. So your feedback is beyond appreciative, and we'd love to be able to hear from you so we can continue to serve you.
So we're going to leave all of our details down in the show notes. You can connect with us on social media. Again, you can join our email list to hear even more from us. And we can't wait to do this again.
Yeah,
very soon.
It's great to be back. Thanks so much for tuning in. Can't wait to do it again.
We are so back. Is that the audio? Is that how it goes? Whatever. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.